Good day. I'm Dr. Charles Dedham. I'm chairman of TMIT Global and one of the co-founders of the MedTech Bystander Rescue Care Program. I'll be both a speaker and your moderator today. We're so very blessed you're joining us to learn how to keep your family safe. We are now in the second quarter of 2021. As we brought in the new year, we sustained an incredible surge of infections and deaths. Now we're facing variant surges and racing to get everyone vaccinated. The use of masks on the bridge to the new normal is just as important to save lives now as it was early in the pandemic. I'm speaking on behalf of a terrific national rapid response team that we assembled when the coronavirus crisis hit. When we found out that there were no resources available for the families of our essential infrastructure workforce, this team got to work. So who are our critical essential workers? There are professional caregivers, first responders, and those who keep the food, power, water, and information flowing in our country. They are in 16 industry sectors identified by the government. They have to go to work no matter what. In August of 2020, educators at all levels of their industry were added to this group. It is our belief that we can't train essential infrastructure workers alone. We believe that the family unit is an Achilles heel in the war against the virus. Family transmission chains or spread through the essential critical worker family is a major risk. They may catch the virus at work, but they're also at great risk in the home. The CDC has confirmed our belief of family and living unit spread with real evidence. It reported on a prospective study that household spread occurs in more than 50% of family members, with infections developing within 5 days. If you save the family, you can save the worker, save the families across communities, and you can help save the nation. The CDC also formally confirmed the risk of aerosol spread of the virus from small droplets. This is where evaporation exceeds gravity of small droplets, allowing viral particles to float in the air for hours and travel through airflow. This is different than the large droplet spread, where gravity exceeds evaporation and the virus-laden droplets land near the infected person. Our frontline research through multiple webinars revealed that caregiver families, essential worker families, and families of the general public not only needed training, but they like to be trained together. This topic addresses one of the most important things we can do to protect our families, those we love, our communities, and our country: masks. We address the science behind how they work and how you can use them to protect you and your family. Infection risk is just basic math. The greater number of virus particles you potentially breathe, the greater the risk for infection, and the greater the risk for severe disease. It's a numbers game. In medicine, we call this dose or viral load. It is believed that individuals become infected by the virus entering the body through the wet mucous membranes that are the moist linings of our nose, eyes, mouth, and respiratory system. Masks have become increasingly recognized as critically important. However, they're no substitute for social or physical distancing, which is most important, hand washing and avoiding touching our faces, and disinfecting high-contact surfaces. Masks are one of these 4 pillars, and they all work together. We're going to cover 3 types of masks that can be used, and we'll cover the most important aspects of what each offer to both those who wear them and those who are in the community. It turns out that all 3 types of masks benefit everyone. Some vocal champions of masks have stated that going without a mask is like drunk driving with a blindfold on. You won't know who you hurt or who will hurt you, but the odds are against you. You can no more defy the law of gravity than you can defy the laws of pandemics. If we infect a loved one and they die, we'll never get over it. First, it's important to know how small the coronavirus is. They're smaller than a micron or a millionth of a meter, and a droplet that can carry the viruses is about 5 microns. A human hair might be at 100 microns in diameter. A red blood cell might be 7 microns, and you just can't see anything under 40 microns. So what infects us is just too small to see. We can become infected by breathing droplets expelled by infected patients who breathe, talk, sing, cough, or sneeze. The virus particles are encased in globs of mucus, saliva, and water. Bigger globs fall faster, so they splash down quickly. Traditionally called droplets, they fall rapidly onto anything nearby. Before new technologies were developed, scientists thought they only drop within 3 to as far as 6 feet from those infected. Smaller globs evaporate faster than they fall. Therefore, the viruses can linger in the air and drift farther afield. These are called aerosols. On July 6, 2020, an open letter to the WHO was published by more than 200 researchers regarding the risk for aerosol transmission through micro droplets smaller than 5 microns in size. The WHO responded with an announcement of a briefing paper that will be forthcoming addressing all routes of spread. We will update our repository and this film as soon as it is available. An excellent paper by Professor Kimberly Prather, who is the chair of atmospheric chemistry at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, published in Science on June 26th, helps us understand these two types of airborne transmission of the coronavirus. She describes airborne transmission as a competition between droplet size, inertia, gravity, and evaporation, which determines how far emitted droplets and aerosols will travel in the air. Droplets will undergo gravitational settling faster than they evaporate, contaminating high contact surfaces and leading to contact transmission. When we're close to someone and we breathe in these larger droplets, it can be very dangerous. Aerosols are smaller, less than 5 microns, and will evaporate faster than they settle. They're buoyant and thus can be affected by air currents, which can transport them over longer distances, even much farther than 6 feet. Many studies have shown that they can hang in the air for hours. The extent and impact of aerosol spread is being studied, and the science of airborne spread will be evolving rapidly. All of the growing evidence supports that this really is occurring. The physics of droplet spread, airflow, and the function of barriers are now being studied as reflected in this paper in the Journal of Physics of Fluids. The modeling of airflow through and around the edges of masks reflect the reality of the value of masks. The research regarding the effectiveness of masks will be ongoing and will continue to leverage new technologies. For instance, Florida Atlantic University has undertaken a study simulating how far droplets might spread. They simulated a cough without any mask. The distance droplets might spread with a bandana alone. The distance droplets might be projected through a 2-layer cloth mask. The press reported this study and others and summarized the average distance a cough travels. The bandana fared the least well. The CDC announcement of recommendations for masks didn't surprise us because those of us in the field knew that this was not done earlier because there were just so few masks for caregivers.
Do you now regret not advising people more forcefully to wear masks earlier?
Okay, we're going to play that game. Let me explain to you what happened back then.
Should be a yes or a no.
No, there's more than a yes or no by the tone of your question. I don't regret that because let me explain to you what happened. At that time, there was a paucity of equipment that our healthcare providers needed, who put themselves daily in harm's way of taking care of people who are ill. We did not want to divert masks and PPE away from them to be used by the people.
As you can see from Dr. Fauci's testimony to Congress, it was due to the lack of available masks for caregivers earlier in the crisis. The CDC guidelines regarding the use of masks by the public had good evidence. This was based on the risk of asymptomatic patients who may never get symptoms and spread the virus, as well as pre-symptomatic individuals who are in the early stages of an infection and have just not yet experienced symptoms, who may also potentially spread the virus. 2 articles published in the New England Journal of Medicine in November of 2020 document cases of asymptomatic transmission. One study documented the outbreak of COVID-19 on the aircraft carrier USS Theodore Roosevelt. It revealed that almost 50% of the COVID-19 positive patients on board were asymptomatic. This group was linked to the transmission of the virus on the ship. The other study was of Marine Corps recruits who had been tested and placed in supervised quarantine. The study revealed asymptomatic transmission of the virus, and certain asymptomatic recruits had high viral loads, reflecting a high probability of potential contagiousness. A typical sneeze may unleash as many as 40,000 droplets. These can not only cause direct spread to others, but may land on surfaces we come in contact with all the time. A now frequently cited New England Journal of Medicine article addressed the persistence of viable virus on high contact surfaces and how it can be suspended in the air and represent an aerosol risk. We're watching this area closely, and a report from the University of Nebraska biocontainment experts commissioned by the CDC addressed shedding of the virus by patients and the same potential. Medical studies are addressing the distance that droplets can travel when someone sneezes, and the NIH, CDC, and leading universities may continue to influence the national guidelines for the use of masks and modifications of social distancing. A study published and picked up by the press on May 13, 2020, reported that speech droplets generated by asymptomatic carriers of the coronavirus are increasingly considered a mode of disease transmission. The study found that loud speech can generate thousands of oral fluid droplets per second, and that they can last in stagnant air for 8 to 14 minutes. The conclusion of the authors of the study was that these observations confirm a substantial probability that normal speaking causes airborne transmission in confined environments. Dr. Atul Gawande, one of our leading champions of patient safety, provides a great review of the science of masks and social distancing in his first of a series of New Yorker magazine articles. He cites a study in Nature that reports surgical masks block 99% of respiratory droplets expelled by people with coronaviruses or influenza viruses. Made of melt-blown polypropylene fiber fabric, the surgical mask material looks like cotton candy under a microscope. An electrostatic charge is applied to the fabric, which is what captures the viruses. Dr. Gawande cites a study comparing surgical masks to cloth masks that showed that the surgical masks were 3 times better than cloth masks at blocking outward transmission of respiratory viruses. He further states that the benefit to the wearer may be limited. However, laboratory research found they reduce inhalation of respiratory droplets by 3/4 for the surgical masks and about half as much for the 2-layer cloth masks. Finally, Dr. Gawande references an extensive review of the research from an international consortium of scientists. He suggests that if at least 60% of the population wore masks that were just 60% effective in blocking viral transmission, which a well-fitting 2-layer cotton mask is, the epidemic could be stopped. The takeaway is that masks work to reduce transmission to the uninfected from both patients with known infections and those who are asymptomatic. Dr. Gawande used the expression regarding the basic logic, I protect you, you protect me. We highly recommend you follow his series. We're often asked about how masks and HEPA filters, high-efficiency particle air filters, work. The science will help make sense of what we're hearing about masks in the press and safe airflow on airlines. Masks work by a combination of filtration and electrostatic attraction that catch viruses. An electrostatic charge is put on N95 and surgical masks in the factories. This helps them catch germs by attraction. The plus is this really works. The minus is that we have to be careful about how we might clean them for reuse in case it would take away the electrostatic charge. N95 masks catch droplets and viruses with very refined filtration materials. They're specified to catch 95% of 0.3 micron particles, and that's how they get their name. N95 masks are typically used in hospitals when caregivers are performing medical procedures with clear aerosol risk. They must be fit tested using a method defined by the manufacturers to make sure there's no leakage around the seal of the mask and the face. In fact, due to the resistance they generate, without a fit test verification process, a surgical mask may offer more protection because more airflow may pass through the mask. An N95 mask with a valve, such as an industrial-grade mask that lets airflow out, will not afford protection to the public. Surgical masks catch droplets and viruses by both electrostatic attraction and filtration through the processes of physical interception and inertial impaction. These are just technical terms for how they physically catch the particles. Cloth masks only catch droplets and viruses by filtration. That's why they're less breathable and less effective. HEPA, high-efficiency particulate air filters, which are in airliners and certain buildings, work by 3 processes: inertial impaction, interception, and diffusion. but not by electrostatic attraction. We just cover the highlights of these processes here and provide a little more detail in our certification courses. If you must care for a family member at home, remember to follow the directions of their caregiver. At first thought, it might seem like we would all want N95 masks. However, the public has no way to be fit tested. There are not enough to go around, and professional caregivers need them. If you are to care for someone at home who is sick, remember that you want to reduce the dose or the number of virus particles you might absorb. Your best defenses are distance, speed, and barriers. Keep your distance from the patient. Minimize the time in the same room or nearby, and properly use barriers. A mask is a barrier. A good quality surgical mask will offer real protection. Many of our caregivers use them to take care of patients who are positive for coronavirus in our hospitals. As you will see, they provide more protection than cloth masks. Make sure the infected patient wears one as well. The following summary review is for those of you who are seeking to do well on our certification courses. The same information applies to our medical, nursing, pharmacy, and college students, professional first responders including law enforcement and lifeguards, our faith-based medical and security volunteers, our educators and schools at all levels, scout groups, teams, and membership organizations, and families seeking certificates to reduce your insurance. The information we review will definitely end up on your quizzes and tests in our Care University Learning Management platform. We'll use the graphics adapted from Dr. Prather's excellent article to review the scientific evidence for surgical and cloth masks. We'll do this because these are the masks that are most likely in use by our families on a daily basis. Let's talk about maximum exposure and risk. Droplets are greater than 5 microns in size, and historically we thought that they drop only 3 to 6 feet away from the person infected. However, recent studies have shown that these large droplets can actually be propelled much further. Aerosols are less than 5 microns in size and may float in the air and float much farther than 6 feet or 2 meters. Aerosols may represent a large proportion of the spread from pre-symptomatic and to a lesser degree asymptomatic patients. When we talk about emitting virus particles in the air, we talk about shedding. Silent shedders are highly contagious before and may peak at the time of first symptoms. Speaking and breathing generate significant aerosols, putting the public at risk. Social or physical distancing is based on studies of large respiratory droplets done in the 1930s prior to higher technology measuring capabilities. That's why we know that the 6 feet distance is probably a minimum. As we look back, airborne transmission was determined to have played a major role in the SARS outbreak in 2003. SARS transmitted greater than 6 feet from the index or the first patient studied. Now let's talk about minimizing exposure and risk. N95 masks, surgical masks, and 2-layer cloth masks all have value to both the wearer and the public. Yes, both the wearer and the public. The public health information here has been confusing, has evolved over time, and there is much misinformation on the web. However, all of the leading scientists are in agreement that masks have value. Every single country that has done well has implemented masks, and every country where the virus is out of control have not.
There's no doubt that wearing masks protects you and gets you to be protected.
Surgical masks block 99% of respiratory droplets expelled by people with coronavirus or influenza viruses. Surgical masks reduce inhalation or breathing in of droplet-sized particles by 75%, and 2-layer cloth masks reduce inhalation by half as much as the surgical masks. And surgical masks are 3 times better than cloth masks at reducing expelled transmission of respiratory viruses. It's interesting to know that if at least 60% of the population wore masks that were just 60% effective in blocking viral transmission, which, by the way, a well-fitting 2-layer cotton mask is, the epidemic could be stopped. A 2-layer cloth mask reduces inhalation of the virus by half as much as surgical masks. Mask wearers were half as likely to get infected during the SARS outbreak. So we've covered a lot of numbers and references to help our medical, nursing, and scientific colleagues know where the evidence came from. However, all these numbers start to swim together in our heads. So in closing, let's see if we can summarize what we can use and what we can act on. The goal is to reduce the dose of virus we might breathe in from others and the dose of virus we might give others. The most extreme risk to all of us is to be within 6 feet of each other for more than 15 minutes, whether we know whether someone is infected or not. You'll get a greater dose of the virus the longer you're close to somebody breathing the same air and touching the same surfaces. If you're in this high-risk group, you may get a call from a contact tracer to let you know you've been in contact with someone and that you may have to quarantine. When it comes to masks, at least wear a 2-layer cloth mask. This likely reduces droplets you breathe out and droplets you breathe in, both by 60%. Of great value, however, as you can see, they absolutely cannot replace social or physical distance. If you wear a surgical mask, it will reduce your exhale droplets by 99% and inhale droplets by 75%. The most protection is with an N95 mask. As we've discussed, they need to be fit tested, and professional caregivers have been given the priority for them. Many of our caregivers who are taking care of COVID-19 patients use good quality surgical masks in the hospital, so as we've discussed, if you need to care for a loved one, they're much better than cloth masks. Whether you use N95, surgical, or cloth masks, as our patient safety hero Dr. Gawande has said, I protect you, you protect me. It's clear, however, that no matter what kind of mask you wear, if you use it properly, you'll have some protection. That in turn will help protect your family and those you love. 3 quick final reminders. First, regarding fit. If air is escaping around the edges of the mask, you are defeating its purpose. The better the seal, the better the protection. Second, don't touch the mask when it's on, and when you remove it, do so by the straps and wash your hands immediately after you remove it. You can become contaminated by the very device that is meant to protect you. Third, don't be fooled by counterfeit masks that are flooding the market. Make sure if you're buying an N95 mask or surgical mask that they are approved for medical use and you're purchasing them from a trusted source. A word on KN95 masks versus N95 masks. The N95 is the standard used in the United States, while the KN95 refers to the standard in China. They both require filtration of 95% of small particles. On paper, they appear the same. However, the tests on the Chinese KN95 masks have been shown that many fail to meet the basic filtration standard, so beware. If you use cloth masks, make sure they are 2 layers thick and that they can work as a filter. When you consider using cloth barriers, keep in mind that Duke researchers found that neck fleece, gaiters, or bandanas offer very little protection. You may have the right masks, however, it is critical that they're worn properly. A mask should completely cover the nose and mouth and should be tight around the ears or head for a snug fit. Some of the most commonly seen mistakes are wearing them without a good fit and failing to cover both the nose and the mouth. In our certification course, we show how professional caregivers remove masks they will have to reuse after they've cared for someone with known COVID-19. We show how to store them for reuse and how to make them last. Join us for this free course. We're watching the WHO, NIH, specialty organizations, and the CDC guidelines closely, and we'll be updating our resources as they do. No matter what, wear a mask, save a life. The life you save may be your own. For the professional caregivers, scientists, and anyone who wishes to review the evidence-based medical and scientific articles that we've cited, as well as articles about masks in the press, you'll find them available to download on our website. For many of our videos, we've created Survive and Thrive guides, which are articles in print that deliver the same message of the videos. They allow the viewers to have the content in writing and the full list of cited references. These articles may be downloaded from our repository.
But I just want to say, for your benefit and for the benefit of all your family and for everybody else around you, please, please, please wear a mask. All right? It's not a political statement. It's a statement of unselfishness. It's a statement of love. It's a statement of responsibility. It's a statement of good stewardship. It's a statement of loving your neighbor as yourself.
Thank you so very much for sharing these resources with your families, colleagues, and friends. You'll be in our prayers. God bless you. The care of our communities is absolutely critical. Thank you for all you're doing to protect those at risk and those who are most vulnerable. As we say to all of our MedTech bystander rescue care teams, we have to fight the good fight, finish the race, and keep the faith. Everyone is a patient and everyone can be a caregiver.